You're not my real daughter anyway. The words hit before I even saw his face. Everything stopped. The clapping, the music, the polite murmurs of proud families celebrating their graduates, all vanished in an instant. Even the baby in the third row stopped crying. My name still echoed from the loudspeakers. Sabrina Lowell. That was supposed to be my moment. My walk across the stage. My smile for the camera, shake the principal's hand moment. But instead I stood frozen in the middle of the gymnasium, blinking under the lights, as my stepmother Evelyn sat stone-faced beside the man I used to call Dad. I'm Sabrina. I'm 22. And for the last 4 years I've worked my way through college, held down 2 jobs and carried the weight of a family that never really claimed me. But I held on because I believed that if I just did enough, they'd see me. I was wrong. Raymond, my adoptive father, stood there in his charcoal suit, arms folded, voice booming like he was making a company announcement instead of shattering my life. You're on your own now. No support. No family. Nothing. As far as I'm concerned, you don't exist. People gasped. Phones lifted. Whispers rippled like a shockwave through the bleachers. I should have cried. Should have run. But I didn't. Because I'd been waiting for this moment. For 3 months I carried an envelope in my folder, one that Evelyn would have burned if she knew it existed. And now, thanks to them, I finally had a stage. I won't lie, this story isn't easy. But if you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or betrayed by those meant to protect you, you're not alone. This is for you. Now let's go back to that stage. To the moment I smiled, walked to the mic, and said, if we're sharing family secrets today, Evelyn, I think the truth about your son is long overdue. And that was just the beginning. The silence that followed my words felt heavier than any applause I could have received. Evelyn didn't say a word. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Grayson looked confused, tugging at her sleeve. He was just a child, caught in a storm he didn't ask for. Her eyes darted toward Raymond, who now sat rigid, blinking fast like he was trying to reset what just happened. I didn't wait for them to catch up. I stepped down from the podium calm, collected, like I hadn't just detonated a bomb in the middle of my own graduation. The principal approached, eyes wide, holding my diploma like it might burn him. Congratulations, Miss Lowell, he whispered. I smiled for the photo. Click. Flash. Done. I walked off stage to a stunned crowd that barely clapped. People weren't sure if they should cheer or gasp again. Behind me, I heard Evelyn calling my name, calling it like she suddenly remembered she once pretended to be my mother. I kept walking. Someone had streamed the whole thing live from the third row. I didn't know who. I didn't even know it had started trending until hours later. Outside, the parking lot shimmered with Texas heat. Balloons floated. Cars honked. Parents hugged their kids like nothing had just happened inside. But something had. Something irreversible. I got into my old blue Corolla, scratched bumper, torn seatbelt, and locked the doors. My hands were shaking now. Only now. Not on stage. Not while exposing them. Now. Because it was done. And I had no idea what would come next. The ride back to my apartment felt longer than usual. Familiar streets looked unfamiliar. Everything had changed, but no one else knew it. Not yet. I lived alone in a 1-bedroom walk-up on the east side of Austin. Small, quiet, and entirely mine. Rent paid from tutoring gigs and weekend shifts at a used bookstore. Raymond and Evelyn hadn't helped with a single bill since sophomore year. But today made it official. I was no longer part of the Lowell family. I wasn't surprised. But it still cut deeper than I wanted to admit. I kicked off my heels, set the diploma on the kitchen table, and stood for a long time in silence. My phone buzzed again and again. Texts from classmates, 2 missed calls from Evelyn, 1 voicemail from an unknown number. I didn't check any of them. Instead, I walked to my bookshelf and pulled down an old copy of Little Women, Caitlin's favorite. Tucked inside the pages was another envelope. Older. Yellowed. Softer at the edges. The one my mother left for me when she knew the cancer was winning. The one Evelyn never knew existed. I hadn't opened it. Not yet. I ran my fingers over her handwriting. For Sabrina. When the time is right. It had felt like the time was never right. Until today. I sat on the couch and gently tore the seal. Inside was a 2-page letter. Neat cursive. Smudged in places. Maybe from her hand shaking, maybe from tears. She started with a line that broke something in me. If Evelyn is still in your life by the time you read this, please trust yourself more than you trust her smile. I stopped breathing. Caitlin had seen it. Even back then. She went on to explain how she had sensed something dark beneath Evelyn's charm. How Raymond, always conflict avoidant, had ignored the red flags. How she feared what Evelyn might become if given power over the house. Over him, over me. You were mine. Chosen. Fought for. Loved. She underlined that word twice. Fought. I wiped my eyes, then read the rest. It wasn't long. But it was enough. Enough to remind me I wasn't crazy. That my instincts had always been right. That I had been gaslit for years by people who smiled with their teeth and stabbed with silence. I folded the letter slowly, carefully, as if folding a part of my soul back into place. I wasn't grieving them anymore. I was remembering who I was before them. And I knew exactly what the next chapter would be. It started, as most terrible things do, with something small. A perfume I didn't recognize. Sweet, sharp, not Evelyn's usual cold vanilla musk. This one lingered in the hallway long after she left. I noticed it on a Tuesday morning. Stuck to the air like a secret that didn't know how to stay quiet. First I brushed it off. Maybe it was a new scent. Maybe I was imagining it. But then came the phone calls. Late ones. She'd step outside to get some air after dinner, clutching her phone a little too tightly. Whenever I walked past the window, I could see her pacing by the hydrangeas, whispering fast. Face turned away. She never paced. Evelyn didn't fidget. She orchestrated. I began noticing other things too, details that seemed harmless until they weren't. A gym bag left in the foyer with a second pair of men's socks inside. A lipstick stain on a takeout coffee cup that wasn't hers. And then a receipt. It was folded into quarters and left inside a cookbook. Evelyn's idea of hiding in plain sight. She never actually used that kitchen. That was Caitlin's space once, warm and full of cinnamon. Evelyn's idea of cooking was ordering from high-end restaurants and plating it like she'd made it. The receipt was for a room at the Larkspur Hotel, 2 nights, ocean view. And the signature at the bottom? D.W. Dylan Weller. It took me less than 30 seconds to remember who he was. He used to be Evelyn's personal trainer. Tan lean. All charm and perfectly timed compliments. I'd only met him once, at a holiday party Evelyn hosted. She'd introduced him as an old friend. He kissed her cheek a little too long. Called me kiddo. Smiled like he knew a joke I wasn't in on. At the time I had ignored the warning bells. But now they were deafening. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Because suspicion is one thing. Proof is another. And I had learned painfully that when it came to Evelyn, truth needed receipts. Literal ones. So I became what she never expected, careful. I started keeping a log. Tuesday 7:42 p.m. Leaves house in gym attire. Returns 10:17 p.m. No sweat. Fresh hair. Thursday 6:10 a.m. Pilates class but yoga mat still in the garage. Friday 1 p.m. spa appointment. Same day. Dylan checks in on social media at a sushi place 10 minutes from the spa. They're tagged in the same group photo. She untagged herself an hour later. It was almost too easy. She was either overconfident or careless. Maybe both. She thought I was still the quiet girl in the background. The one who disappeared into books and stayed out of adult conversations. But I had changed. Loss has a way of reshaping you. Losing Caitlin left a silence I had to learn to fill with my own voice. I just hadn't realized until now that I could also use it to uncover the lies being whispered in that silence. A week later I followed her. She left that morning in sleek black leggings and a white tank top, hair pinned. Sunglasses oversized. Said she was heading to a bar class. I waited 10 minutes, then got in my car and followed her from a few cars back. She didn't drive toward the gym. She took the expressway, then exited at Shoreline Drive. My hands gripped the wheel tighter. My pulse thudded in my ears. Sure enough, she pulled into the Larkspur Hotel. She didn't even hesitate. Walked straight through the revolving door like she'd done it 100 times. I parked across the street. Waited. 12 minutes later, Dylan's matte gray Tesla slid into the lot. I took photos. I didn't want to, but I did. When they came back out an hour later laughing, his hand low on her back, I took more. Then I drove away. Not because I was done watching, but because I didn't need to anymore. I had what I needed. The question was, what was I going to do with it? For days I wrestled with that answer. Confront Evelyn? She'd deny it. Cry. Twist the story until I was the villain. That was her gift. Tell Raymond? He'd look away. Pretend it wasn't real. He always did. So I waited. Until I overheard something I wasn't supposed to. Late one night, I was visiting the house to drop off mail addressed to me. Evelyn was in the kitchen. Speaking on speakerphone, she thought she was alone. Her voice was sharper than usual. You need to be more careful, Dylan, she snapped. Sabrina's nosy. She sees things. There was a pause. Relax. She continued. Raymond's clueless. Always has been. That girl's practically out the door anyway. Once graduation's done, she's no longer my problem. I didn't move. Not even when she turned off the light and walked past the hallway where I stood hidden in the dark. Her perfume trailed behind her. That same sickly sweet scent from weeks ago. In that moment, I knew two things with absolute clarity. One, she didn't just want me gone. She wanted me erased. And two, I had to stop waiting. The stage was coming. The lights were real. The audience was already watching. And when the time came, she wouldn't be the one holding the mic. The day after I followed Evelyn to the hotel, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake until 4 a.m., replaying every moment I'd spent in that house. The quiet dinners, the cold stares, the moments when I thought I was overreacting. Evelyn had always been too perfect. Her smiles were too calculated. Her affection too conditional. But knowing something is wrong and being able to prove it, those are two different things. That's why I opened the second envelope. The one I had kept hidden for nearly 8 years. Caitlin had written it during her last month in hospice care. I was 14. She gave it to my aunt with one request. When she's old enough to understand, not angry, not confused, but clearer, give her this. I found it again after graduation, buried inside a box I hadn't touched in years. And now, finally, I felt ready. It was written in her handwriting, rounded, patient, the kind she used to label cookie jars and wrap birthday presents. The salutation read simply, to my Sabrina. With all the love I can fit in these pages. The first paragraph was gentle. She reminded me how loved I was, how she and Raymond had fought to adopt me. I wasn't a backup plan. I wasn't a second choice. I was chosen. Then the tone shifted. She started to explain Evelyn. Not as she became, but as she was even before Caitlin passed. I never trusted her, Caitlin wrote. From the moment she met you, there was something in her eyes. Not jealousy, not anger, just calculation. Like you were an obstacle to something she wanted. I remember reading that sentence 3 times. An obstacle. It made sense now. Why Evelyn slowly erased traces of my mother from the house. Why she replaced Caitlin's old reading lamp with a sterile gold fixture. Why the vanilla candles were swapped for cold eucalyptus diffusers. Even the photos, ones with just Caitlin and me, migrated quietly into drawers. It wasn't grief. It was erasure. Caitlin had seen it coming. She wants Raymond's full attention, the letter continued. And she can't have it with you in the picture. There it was clear, written in ink long before I could have understood it. My mother had known Evelyn would try to push me out. She just didn't know how far she'd go. She's charming when she needs to be, Caitlin wrote, but cruel when no one's watching. Don't let her rewrite who you are. Don't let her define what you're worth. I felt something crack open inside me. Because that's exactly what I had let happen. For years I let Evelyn decide how small I should be. How quiet. How grateful. I folded myself into corners just to keep the peace. Just to survive. But Caitlin hadn't raised me to survive. She had raised me to see. And finally I saw everything. I remembered the day Evelyn first came into our lives. I was 16. Caitlin had been gone for almost 2 years. And Raymond was still moving through the world like a man trying to outrun his own shadow. Evelyn was the opposite of Caitlin in every way. Sharper, shinier, louder. She wore heels to backyard barbecues and talked like a politician, always performing. At first I thought maybe that's what Raymond needed, something so unlike what he had lost. But she never asked about Caitlin. Never mentioned her name. She avoided anything that made me feel real. A month after she moved in, I came home from school and found Caitlin's wedding ring in the trash. No explanation. No accident. That was the day I stopped speaking at dinner. And the day Evelyn started winning. Reading Caitlin's words now made me realize just how deep that manipulation had run. I had been silenced by subtlety, bruised by politeness. Until now. At the end of the letter, Caitlin wrote one last paragraph, shorter, shakier. There may come a day when you have the truth, but you'll be afraid to use it. Use it anyway. Not to hurt, but to heal yourself. You are not small. You never were. I read that line again and again until the paper blurred through tears. It was time. I spent the next 3 days gathering everything I had. Hotel receipts, screenshots, timestamps, even the texts Evelyn didn't think I saw, like the one where she wrote to Dylan. Once the girl's out of the picture, everything will be easier. I printed it all. I made copies. And I slid them into a clean white envelope, the kind the school gave us for our diplomas. Because if Evelyn wanted to make my graduation the day she erased me, then I would make it the day I rewrote the truth. Graduation morning arrived with too much sunlight. It poured through the curtains like it didn't know today wasn't a celebration. I dressed slowly, pressed blouse, black slacks, a pair of small earrings Caitlin had given me on my 16th birthday. I didn't feel proud. I felt braced. Like a soldier tying her boots. As I tucked the envelope into my graduation folder, my phone lit up. A message from Evelyn. We'll be there. Don't embarrass yourself. I didn't reply. I knew where they'd sit. 4th row. Aisle seat, close enough to be seen but far enough to leave early if needed. Raymond had always preferred control over closeness. At the gymnasium, I lined up with the other graduates. Some were bouncing with excitement, others tearing up over the moment. I stood still. When the principal welcomed us, I barely heard him. I kept my eyes on Evelyn. She looked immaculate as always, polished hair, tight dress, sunglasses still on indoors. Raymond sat beside her, unmoving. She held Grayson in her arms like a trophy. They called names in alphabetical order. Applause. Whistles. Flashing lights. And then, Sabrina Lowell. I stepped forward. The room hushed. I took 3 steps. That's when it happened. Raymond stood. And with perfect calm, perfect cruelty, he spoke loud enough to reach the back of the room. You're not my real daughter anyway. The words dropped like a match in dry grass. Gasps. Whispers. Chairs creaked. Phones turned. Someone actually said, "Did he just say that?" I stopped walking. Halfway to the stage. I looked at him. His face was blank. Corporate. Like he was cutting a client loose from a contract. Beside him, Evelyn sat with a smirk so slight I almost missed it. This was planned. I felt it in my bones. This wasn't an outburst. This was execution. Public and deliberate. He wasn't just disowning me. He was erasing me. And that's when the fear melted. Right there in front of everyone I ever went to school with. Everyone who had smiled politely at Evelyn's charm. Everyone who assumed I was part of a happy blended family. I smiled. Not a nervous smile. Not a polite smile. The kind of smile you make when you know exactly what comes next and they don't. I stepped off the line and walked, not to the diploma table, but straight to the podium. The principal tried to stop me. I didn't even look at him. I adjusted the microphone. Took a breath. If we're sharing family secrets today, I said, voice steady, eyes on Evelyn. Then I think the truth about your son is long overdue. Silence. Then murmurs. Phones everywhere. Evelyn's face drained of color. I pulled the envelope from my folder and held it up. This, I said, is a DNA test. Conducted by a private lab. Verified. Documented. I paused. And it proves with 99.9% certainty that the child you've been passing off as my father's, Grayson, isn't biologically his. The room exploded. People stood. Mouths opened. Cameras zoomed in. Evelyn's hand clamped around Grayson like he might float away. Raymond, finally, blinked like waking from a dream. I wasn't done. You've been having an affair with Dylan Weller, I continued. Holding up printed photos for over a year. You've stayed in hotels under your name and his. You sent messages, this one, for example, where you said, once the girl's out of the picture, everything will be easier. I let that hang in the air. Evelyn stood. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. I took a final step forward, lowered my voice, but made sure it still carried. You tried to cut me out to protect your secret. But here's the thing, Evelyn. I don't go quietly. She turned, clutching Grayson, and bolted for the exit. Her heels caught on the floor mat. Someone laughed. She didn't look back. The doors slammed behind her. I looked at Raymond. He hadn't moved. Not when I spoke. Not when she ran. He just stared like the man who built the house had finally realized it was on fire. I took the diploma from the stunned principal's hand, smiled for the camera, and walked off the stage. No one clapped. Not because they didn't want to, but because they were still catching up. I hadn't even left the school gates before a clip of my words started spreading. One caption read, "This girl just exposed her family at graduation, and it's wild." But I didn't care about going viral. This wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming something I never got to have. A voice. And now, everyone had heard it. By the time I reached my apartment, the video had over 11,000 views. By morning it would be 500,000. Someone had streamed the whole thing on TikTok Live. The caption read, "She destroyed her stepmom at graduation, flushed face fire." Within hours I was everywhere. Reddit threads. Reaction videos. Even a BuzzFeed-style article titled, "This girl's graduation mic drop has the internet screaming." I didn't feel famous. I felt exposed. My phone buzzed nonstop. Classmates, old teachers, distant cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. People called me brave, savage, legendary. Some asked if it was fake. It wasn't. I didn't post the video. I didn't share it. But I couldn't stop it either. The internet had taken it and turned it into a moment. I just happened to be at the center of it. Evelyn's social media disappeared within 24 hours. Her skincare business, a boutique line she launched last year, shut down its website the next day. Rumors flew. Someone claimed she left town with Grayson that very night, driving west with no forwarding address. Someone else said Dylan dumped her the second the video went viral. I didn't care. Let them vanish. Rumor had it Dylan blocked her that same night. Cleared all traces of her from his socials like she'd never existed. Let them rebuild in silence the way they tried to destroy me. The real surprise came 2 nights later. I had just finished reheating leftover noodles when I heard a knock on my door. It was Raymond. He looked nothing like the man at graduation. His tie was gone. His shirt untucked. He looked tired in a way I had never seen. Not the tired of long meetings or jet lag, but the tired of someone whose world no longer made sense. "Sabrina," he said softly. I didn't invite him in. I just stepped outside and closed the door behind me. We stood in the hallway like strangers. "I don't expect forgiveness," he said. "Good," I replied. "I was wrong," he continued. "About so much. About her. About you." I didn't say anything. "I let her push you out," he whispered. And I didn't just watch it, I helped her do it. My throat tightened. Because he was right. He hadn't just stood by, he'd held the door open for her. "What do you want, Raymond?" I asked. He looked at me then, really looked. Like he was seeing me for the first time in years. "To give you something," he said, and reached into his coat pocket. He pulled out a small weathered envelope. I didn't recognize it. "She left this," he said. "Caitlin." I wasn't ready to read it until now. He handed it to me. I took it with trembling hands and walked back inside. Raymond didn't follow. He stood in the hallway while I opened it. The letter was dated a week before her final hospitalization. It wasn't long. "Raymond," she wrote, "if you're reading this, then maybe you're finally ready to stop pretending everything is okay." She went on to talk about Evelyn, not with bitterness, but with startling clarity. "She wants you because you're safe, contained, controllable. You were always easy to manipulate, Ray. That's why I loved you, but it's also why I feared what would happen after I was gone." I blinked hard. "Protect our daughter," the letter said. "Even when you don't understand her. Especially then." There was more. But I stopped reading. Because for the first time I realized something. This story wasn't just about betrayal. It was about blindness. Raymond hadn't hurt me out of hatred. He'd hurt me out of fear, out of weakness, out of silence. But it didn't make it okay. And it didn't mean I owed him anything. The next day I started boxing up my apartment. I didn't want to stay in the same space where grief and rage and survival all lived under one roof. I found a small studio across the river. Sunlight, quiet walls, no ghosts. It wasn't much. But it was mine. A week later, I got an email from a local women's center. They'd seen the video. One of their board members had forwarded it. They offered me a part-time position. mentor for at-risk girls. I accepted. I wasn't trying to be inspirational. I just wanted to help someone like me. Someone who had spent too long being told to shrink, to stay silent, to be grateful. At the center, I met girls like Amaya, 15, fiercely smart, convinced no one saw her. And Layla, 17, kicked out for speaking up against her stepfather. I didn't preach. I just listened. And slowly they listened back. One afternoon, Amaya asked, "Is it true you exposed your stepmom on stage?" I smiled. "It's true." "Were you scared?" Terrified, I wanted to say. But instead I said, "Sometimes fear isn't the thing that stops you. It's the thing that tells you you're finally doing something worth it." She nodded like she understood. And maybe she did. Fall came early that year. The air in Austin turned crisp by late September. Leaves rustled down the sidewalks like whispers that didn't need to be spoken aloud. For the first time in years I felt quiet inside. Not empty. Not numb. Just still. I had a routine now. Early shifts at the women's center, evenings with books. The occasional night sitting by the river watching the city lights flicker like restless thoughts. Raymond emailed once. Short. Hesitant. No subject line. "I'd like to try again. As your father. Or at least as a man who knows he failed you. No expectations. Just a dinner. On your terms." I didn't reply right away. I stared at the message for days, unsure what I owed him. Unsure what I owed myself. Forgiveness is strange. It doesn't come with trumpets or confetti. It arrives in quiet moments, when you no longer feel the need to explain why you're still angry. So one Friday night I said yes. We met at a small Thai restaurant. Neutral ground. Somewhere neither of us had memories. He was already seated when I arrived. No suit this time. Just a sweater and eyes that looked tired but softer somehow. For 10 minutes we didn't talk about anything real. Just weather, traffic, how the curry was spicier than expected. Then, without prompting, he said, "I've read Caitlin's letter every day since graduation." I nodded. She warned me. I just didn't want to believe she could be right. About me. About what I'd become. I didn't interrupt. "She chose you," he said. "She fought for you. And I treated you like a responsibility. Not a daughter." There was a pause. And then he asked the one question I knew would come. "Can you forgive me?" I looked at him. Not the version of him I remembered growing up, but the man sitting across from me now. Flawed. Stripped of performance. Finally real. I already did. I said softly, "But that doesn't mean we go back." He blinked. "I don't need to be accepted anymore," I continued. "Not by you. Not by anyone. I just need to know who I am, and I do now." We sat in silence after that. But not the heavy kind. The kind that settles like mist, quiet but honest. He paid the bill. Walked me to my car. Hesitated. Then, like someone afraid he might never get the chance again, he said, "You are my daughter." And this time I believed he meant it. I didn't cry. I didn't say it back. But I nodded. That was enough. A month later I got a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a photo album. Leather-bound. Handwritten labels under each picture. The first photo, me, age 3, clinging to Caitlin's leg. The next, me and her arms on adoption day, both of us grinning like we just won the lottery. Then birthdays. Holidays. Little moments, me brushing my teeth in footy pajamas, her reading on the couch with me curled beside her. On the last page was a note. She kept these in her bedside drawer. Looked at them every night before bed. No signature. I didn't need one. It was Caitlin's way of telling me again that I was wanted, that I had always been enough. I still have the DNA results. Tucked away in a locked drawer I rarely open. Not as a weapon. Not anymore. But as a reminder, truth matters. Even when it's hard. Even when it costs everything. Especially then. Sometimes, the loudest revenge isn't about rage or destruction. It's about walking away whole. It's about healing so deeply that the people who tried to erase you no longer even exist in the story you're writing next. One evening, as I was leaving the women's center, Amaya caught up to me in the hallway. "Hey," she said. "You know that graduation story? The one everyone's been talking about." I smiled. "Yeah, I remember." She hesitated. "I don't want to do something big like that. But I told my aunt I don't want to live with her anymore." I told her everything, even the scary stuff. My chest tightened. And I asked. She believed me. She said it like a miracle. She said we'd figure it out together. I hugged her. Not as a mentor. Not even as a survivor. But as someone who knew what it felt like to finally be believed. When people ask me now what happened that day, what really happened, I tell them this. I didn't burn down my family. They lit the match themselves. I just stopped pretending I wasn't standing in the fire. And when the flames cleared, I was still there. Still me. Only now. I wasn't trying to fit into a family that never truly wanted me. I was building one with truth, with choice, with people who didn't need me to shrink in order to stay. I was no longer surviving. I was living. And for the first time in my life, that felt like freedom.